Alright, it's time to ask the most important question of every single patch. Which character should you pull in patch 3.3? This is going to be a pretty huge one because the character who's coming in patch 3.3 is pretty insane, I would say. And I know that this is going to be quite a tough decision for many of us, especially those who have not got any of these characters on your account as of right now, which is why today, as usual, we're going to be having a video diving in depth into the characters so that you have a complete understanding of them, and then finally going to be helping you to make the right decision for your account. Now guys, here's a quick word on today's sponsor, Paimon's Bargain. If you're someone who's been spending your hard-earned money to pull for your favorite character, you'd know how expensive the top-up can get. But what if I were to tell you that from now on you can get at least a 20% off on all of your top-ups, walk-ins, and battle pass buy? How much would that help you to save? And that's what Paimon's Bargain here will provide you. Whenever you order your Primogems buy through Paimon's Bargain, you will be able to order at a discounted price. Now the reason why this is legit is because it is through discounted Coda shop, or you can understand it as gift card discount. Paimon's Bargains already have many people following, plus have worked with larger creators like coaching mains. And of course, I wouldn't be telling you guys this if it wasn't legit. How you do it is basically join Paimon's Bargain Discord server. There will be a link down in my description, and once you're there will be direct instruction on how you can order. Right now, since there will be a Primogem shop reset in patch 3.1, they are holding an event where there is a 30% off when buying every Primogems pack in the shop. Link to Paimon's Bargain Discord in the description. As always, good luck on your character pools guys, limited spending only if you do spend, and with that, let's just hop into today's video. Now first off, we're going to be going through all of the characters' most important points so that you technically know how they work. Otherwise, you won't be able to make the best decision, right? First off, we're going to be looking into our Wanderer. Now bear in mind that as of the point of I make this video, he's not officially released yet, and so his information is very much able to change at any time. Therefore, do take everything we discuss about him here with a grain of salt, at least until he is officially arrived. And also, we won't be going through every single bit of detail within his specific build, as that would be a little bit too long for this video, but we'll cover basically the most important point of how the Wanderer will work, in that our newly added Anemo boy here is gonna be a hyper carry. How he works is fairly simple, in that most of his utility revolve around him using his E skill, in that whenever he uses his E skill, he's gonna be in a hovering state, basically the first character in Genshin Impact that is able to fly, which I would say is one of the highest selling points of the Wanderer at this point. And then from there, primarily we're going to be dealing our normal and charge attack that looks like a wind sickle to our enemies. And then as first burst, HOYO-verse know exactly what your audience wants, which is why it is what it is. And I am sure many of the players will be shrimping over Wanderer just because of his burst. Another interesting factor of the Wanderer's kit is that he has the ability to ascend bow and cutlass by decreasing the amount of Mora expended by 50%, which is pretty nuts. Don't underestimate the power of this passive skill guys, because this is literally one of the best passive skill in the game right now, saving you a ton of Mora, or in other words, saving you a lot of resins for yourself. So it is something that you do want to consider as well, because I myself at first didn't plan on pulling for the Wanderer, but after seeing this passive skill, it has really changed my mind and make me consider a lot for him now. So overall guys, his kit will resolve around him dealing a lot of Anemo damage. Now in terms of his power level, I'm really sure we don't really have to discuss too much, as I am sure that HOYO-verse won't be messing up the Wanderer, since knowing that many of the players are waiting for him for a long time. So I'm sure he's going to be dealing a lot of high damage numbers. The biggest thing with the Wanderer though is that he's largely going to be a preference character. Furthermore, he is a hyper carry, which will potentially actually lower his value quite a lot more, especially for those who focuses on the meta, because as you've known, hyper carries in Genshin Impact is largely a preference use, and most of the time don't have too much of an impact toward the meta, because at this point in time we just have a lot of hyper carries already. But not just that, usually hyper carries character have some of the downside that other character don't have, which is that they just demands a lot of on-field time. Therefore, the rotation in which you have to place them in is rather strict many of the time, due to the fact that you have to coordinate all of the other sub DPS character and buff toward the duration that they are on field, because if the other support characters buff on your team goes out before your hyper carry is able to fully utilize their on-field time, you're basically missing out on a lot of your DPS power. And also, the Wanderer is an anemo character, in other words, he won't be able to make most of the use Dendro reaction have, and since Dendro reaction is basically the meta right now, you're kind of gonna be missing out on a bit of reactions. However, that's not to say that the Wanderer can't be run in a Dendro reaction team, because if for example we run the Wanderer along with Nahida, Xingqiu and Fischl, he's still going to be able to act as a driver on field to trigger Xingqiu's and Fischl's sub DPS damage, to also trigger Nahida's reaction as well, therefore providing the team a lot of off-field damage. So that's just going to be an example of how the Wanderer is going to be in the Dendro reaction team. We won't be touching too in-depth in teams here, but that's going to be a topic of another video, and that's just to show that he's still going to be a pretty good character when it comes to Dendro reaction teams. Another thing you do want to keep in mind, especially the Wanderer though, is that since he is an anemo DPS character, anemo element themselves is pretty hard to break shield. Now in some of the past Abyss, we haven't got any of the enemies that focuses on shield like the Abyss Lecter series, but if they actually do make back their appearance, my saying is that the Wanderer is going to be having trouble breaking shield himself, because since he is a hyper anemo carry similar to Xiao, and Xiao himself already had the problem with shield before, we may be seeing the same thing with the Wanderer, and you will have to rely on other characters on your team to be able to break shield. So those are some of the main points we want to discuss about the Wanderer as of this point. Moving on to our Raiden Shogun. Oh my god, she's just still freaking insane, because I'm sure every one of us has already been aware, with the introduction of Dendro reaction, it's just made a significant buff to every single electro character there is in Genshin Impact. For Raiden Shogun, even before Dendro reaction arrived, she's already considered to be one of the best DPS character on your account, especially for free-to-play players, because she has a very good free-to-play build. Not to mention, her ability to deal damage at C0 is so good that you never really have to consider any other constellation of her, even though she still has the option to go all the way up to at least her C2, providing her a whopping 60% damage increase, which is just nuts. So even if you don't really have any other good character to carry you in your account, just as long as you have Raiden on your team, she's going to be taking care of most of the content for you. Alongside with her amazing DPS capability, she's also a very good support character, in that she has very good battery regen for your team, lowering the energy requirement on every single of Raiden Shogun's team by a lot, and also she increases your team burst damage as well, which is technically the only character in the game that has access to this right now. Not to mention, she basically have her E skill up 100% of the time, dealing a little bit of off-field damage, but moreover applying electro damage to your enemies all around. Therefore, basically as long as you have Raiden Shogun on your team, you're going to be able to build some kind of team around her, because she is just that versatile. And then after, with the introduction of Dendro reaction, the majority of the time she's now being used in a Dendro reaction team, especially with a Nahida team if you have her, because if you're having both of those characters on your team, you're definitely going to be annihilating every single content there is, as those two characters works absolutely perfect together, and so everything is just working out very well for Raiden Shogun. Now the only real and honest downside that Raiden Shogun have at this point, now I don't even think that it's actually called a downside, but the fact that she is basically in a DPS role does have a little bit of competition because there's just so many other electro DPS characters at this point in time. If you're more of a casual player, and I believe that a large majority of the Genshin Impact community is a casual player, many of the time we're going to be choosing our preference character over a meta character. Because for me personally guys, I am a Keqing main and I use my Keqing most of the time. Therefore, since I'm already having Keqing on the team, many of the cases I'm not going to be having places for Raiden Shogun to be on the team, and I have to spare for other buffer or support character on Keqing's team. So honestly, I haven't been using Raiden for quite some time myself, and I'm sure this goes the same for many of us out there too. So that is once again something to consider, not to mention there will be a lot more other electro DPS character to come in the future. On to Ayato, who haven't been back since the newly release of his, and I'm sure many people is going to be looking out for him since he is a pretty good character as well. Especially with the introduction of Dendro, it has given him a little bit more versatility in terms of his team build. Now the thing with Ayato is that he has the ability to have very strong damage output, especially when it comes to AoE situation. Even if you're having enemies around you who isn't too closely grouped with each other, his E skill damage is still going to be able to deal damage in AoE situations, which is really good and a satisfying thing to have as well. In terms of Ayato gameplay, he's one of the easiest characters to play in Genshin Impact because all you have to do is press his E skill and then spam your normal attack. That is basically it. Not to mention his burst allows him to be a sub DPS character as well, though most of the time I don't find people use him as a sub DPS character, but there is a role for him because his burst sometimes is very long and has a very wide AoE as well for hydro application, which makes him performs very well as a hydro enabler, especially when it comes to a perma freeze team. After with the introduction of Dendro reactions, he now have access to Bloom and Hyper Bloom team if you want to use that, though most of the time his Vaporize team still out damage his other Dendro reaction team. They still provide Ayato with a lot of different team build. Now the main downside that Ayato have right now is that he's also in quite a lot of competition with other hydro DPS character because we do have quite a few that are very good at this point. Also, many of the time Ayato is more of a hydro enabler than a hydro trigger because the fact that his E skill just applies hydro very fast. We don't have any character, especially when it comes to pyro application, to match up with his speed. Therefore, whenever a reaction such as Vaporize is done, he's just going to be reapplying hydro already, and then other pyro character is going to be doing the reactions instead. Moving on to our man Itto. Well, I don't know if this is going to be a good news or a bad news for Itto's fan especially, but even though after with Dendro reaction arrive, Itto is still Itto. There's just no improvement to him whatsoever. Everything good and bad of him is still there. Now what makes Itto so good is that he's relatively an easy character to play who has access to very good geo damage. Most of the content, especially the Abyss right now, you're still going to be able to use geo character to deal damage pretty well, and they will have no trouble whatsoever, especially when geo don't really have too much of a problem dealing with other reactions because they themselves don't really have a specific reaction with other elements apart from the fact that creating shield. Itto himself have a pretty unique gameplay, I would say, in that he focuses on charge attack mainly, and you focusing on what's called a superlative stack in order to power up his charge attack. And also he's once again a hyper carry role, which is why he's in a player preference role most of the time. Now something unique about Itto is that he scales purely with defense, which is something that's still quite rare in the game till now, and the fact that his team demands very specific support character leaves him in a much more preference role already, in that Itto must have Goro to run along with him. Now I wouldn't say too much of a must have, but it's just a very much of a different performance if Itto don't run along with Goro, since Goro is the only character in the game right now that buff defense character. Plus he has access to healing at C4, therefore allowing you to save a healer slot, and most of the time help you to focus on building building a mono Geo team around Itto. Now some of the main downside that Itto has is, first off, he has quite an initial investment because you want to level up all the way to level 90 on Itto to get the maximum benefit out of him. Itto team build is also very limited because you want to build him around with Goro. In order to make the most out of Itto team build, you generally do want to have a C for Goro so that he now have access to healing for the team. Therefore, that's going to be quite a lot of investment. Also, Itto do need a considerable amount of energy recharge, at least 140 energy recharge above, in which most of the time the best team that he runs in would be a mono Geo team so that it solves his energy recharge problem. His best in slot artifact set is the Opulent Dream, which is one of the worst domain that you can farm in the whole of Genshin Impact. So if you're farming in the artifacts domain, I do wish you good luck to get the best out of your resin usage. And also, since Geo don't react with other elements, they're going to be relying on raw Geo damage themselves, especially when 4-piece Viridescent won't be working along with Geo. Geo team, especially with Itto, can only rely on the buff of their support characters. And so those should be most of the main point you want to remember for each of these characters. I hope that now you have a much better understanding so that you're able to make the best decision for your account. Now we'll move on to one of the most important part of this video, which is answering which character should you pulling for, and I'm going to be prioritizing each of these characters in our 3.3 banner. I do have to say that these characters coming in patch 3.3 are really good characters, and you will be able to do well with these characters regardless of which character you choose. Now before we answer this, I do have to remind you that Genshin Impact is rather an easy game, so many of the time we don't really have to take too much consideration towards the meta, and you will be able to do well with any of the character that you choose. The only main thing is that you invest to them and then build a very good team around the character that you choose in order to perform well. And so the most important deciding factor here whenever it comes to choosing a character is going to be down to your preference. Which character that you feel like you're going to be enjoying playing more, that's going to be the exact character that you want to choose. And so now here's going to be my personal ranking list of the priority choosing. First off, it's definitely gonna be Raiden Shogun if you didn't have her on your account, because if you haven't noticed, HOYO-verse just love their Archons and they always makes the Archon ability to be slightly, if not a lot better than most of the character in the game, because Raiden Shogun have access to not only very good if not the best DPS capability, but also have access to very good support for your whole team. So if you're someone who's having trouble especially clearing the Abyss, having Raiden Shogun on your team will solve the matter pretty quickly. Not to mention her value will be able to stay for a very long time unless you have a new other favorite Electro DPS character later on, so you will never go wrong whenever pulling for Raiden Shogun. Next up is going to be our Wanderer, because he is a new character that have access to a very interesting ability of able to hovering or able to fly in Genshin Impact, the very first character to be able to do so. Therefore, even if he is in a hyper carry role, that's still going to be a very interesting factor that people pull for the Wanderer, since especially when it comes to exploration and doing overworld playing, you're going to be finding a lot of value out of him. Furthermore, his animation is just very cool as well, with dealing all of the attack with the wind sickles and all of that burst animation. I'm sure many of us will be very happy whenever we pull for the Wanderer. After that, it's going to be Ayato, because he's still a very good Hydro character that have access to very good DPS capability of AoE situation as well, and the fact that his bursts provide your team a lot with Hydro application and a very long uptime, helping your team a lot with reactions. Furthermore, he also have access to very badass E-skill animation as well, so that can be something very fun to play. And then lastly, it's going to be our boy Itto once again. Itto is very much a preference character at this point, because most of the time he is once again a hyper carry, and the only thing that people pull for him is because whether they love him or not, because Itto team build is just very limited and hard to play around at times, especially when it comes to defense scaling. We just don't have a lot of access to different defense buffer and defense scaling character to help out with Itto. Therefore, if you didn't have Itto already, you wouldn't realize how limited he can get at times when it comes to using Itto on your team. And so that would be the ranking in terms of the priority list when it comes to pulling for character. Of course, it also comes down to you as well. Now, there are also some main question that I've seen a lot from people asking, and I want to address this in the video as well, in that I've seen many of the question asking whether they should pull for C2 Raiden Shogun or not. In that, first of all, once again, I say that constellation pulling is never gonna be a must pull. That is something you do purely out of your preference, and also especially when it comes to the fact that C0 Raiden just annihilates everything in the game already. I myself experienced this because my Raiden Shogun is still at C0. You do not need a C2 Raiden Shogun to be a game changer for your account. If you're still not able to clear the abyss with C0 Raiden Shogun, then definitely that is not her problem, but your building investment of your other support characters. And then next is that, what if I choose to skip the whole of patch 3.3 banners? Does that affect anything? And my saying is that it's absolutely fine. You don't need any of the 3.3 characters in order for your account to be good, because as I have mentioned, Genshin Impact is a really easy game and you can do just fine with any of the character of your likings. And so patch 3.3 banner is pretty interesting because we have a pretty good cast of character coming back. I hope that this video have been able to clear out many of the questions that you have been having. If you have any question, comment down below and I will get to you there. Now if you're someone who feels that you're still lacking the Primogems to get over of the character that you want, then in collaboration with Paimon's Bargain, we're doing a 6,480 Primogems pack giveaways once Scaramouche banners drop. The giveaway will be held on my Discord server, so if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and join my Discord server to not miss out on the giveaway. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me till this part of the video, and with that I wish you a super day and I will catch you on my next video.